Namaste. In this video, we will be going over acute and obtuse angles. So what is an obtuse angle? These are any angles that measure between 90 and 180 degrees. Let's look at an example. So, keeping in mind that they must be within this range, there are several examples I can construct. The one I've constructed is approximately 135 degrees. So that's an obtuse angle. What about an acute angle? These are any angles that measure less than 90 degrees. So if I were to construct an example, there would once again be many. I'll construct a 45-degree angle. So that would look something like this. And there we have it. I've constructed a 45-degree acute angle. A vertex is a point where two lines intersect. So, in theory, we've been dealing with vertexes this entire time. Whenever you construct an angle, the point where the two lines intersect is called the vertex. So for example, if I were to construct a right angle, then the point where the first line intersects the second line is called the vertex. And note that every angle has a vertex, whether it's acute, obtuse, right, or reflex. A ray is a part of a line with one fixed point and no end. Remember that a line extends continuously in both directions, so it goes on forever, indefinitely. Now, a ray is part of a line, but the difference is that it has a starting point and then it continues on forever in one direction. Now, why is this important when we're talking about angles? Well, think about it. Every single angle is constructed out of two rays. The start point is called the vertex, and there is no endpoint. So for example, if I constructed an acute angle, then one of the rays would look like that, and the other ray would look like that. So basically, every angle has two rays that both intersect at a common point that we discussed earlier is called the vertex. And I can label my angle based on where the vertex falls. So if the vertex is called B, this angle would be called ABC, because B is in the center between points A and C. Let's now practice some problems. Before I go over them, I hope all of you guys can give them a shot on your own. So please pause the video and go ahead. Okay, assuming you've done so, let's do the first problem. We're asked to sort the following into acute and obtuse angles. Remember that an acute angle measures less than 90 degrees and an obtuse angle measures between 90 and 180 degrees. So I'm going to create two categories. One is going to be our acute angles, and one is going to be our obtuse angles. And we'll categorize them based on their letters. So let's start with letter A. I see that A measures 30 degrees, and since that's less than 90, it is an acute angle. So we'll add A to our list. Let's go on to B. This measures 94 degrees. Since that's greater than 90 but less than 180, it's an obtuse angle. What about C? Well, C is 89. That's one less than 90. So it's still less than 90 but greater than 0. So it's an acute angle. Angle D, 112. Well, that's greater than 90 and less than 180. So it's an obtuse angle. So I hope you guys are starting to notice that this is much simpler than it seems. All we're doing is categorizing them based off their values. If we move on to E, well, we don't have a value. We don't have an angle measure written. Instead, we can assume from the diagram that this angle measure is greater than 90 but less than 180. so it's an obtuse angle. For F, once again, we don't have an angle measure, but we can assume that it's greater than 90 and less than 180. And lastly, for G, we have a 45-degree angle measure. Since that's less than 90, it is acute. So that's how you would attempt this problem. Let's move on to our next set of questions. The first one is asking us which of the following are acute angles. So notice how we're not directly given any of the angle measures. Instead, we need to make assumptions by looking at the following figure. So let's see. In this case, we're only trying to solve for acute angles. Let's look at angle 1. Well, angle 1, we don't know its measure, but we can assume that it's likely an obtuse angle because it's greater than 90 but less than 180. So therefore, we cannot add 1 to our answer. What about 2? Well, to me, 2 looks like a 45-degree angle, right between 0 and 90. So in that case, we could add 2 to our list of answers, and 2 would be considered an acute angle. What about 3? Well, if we compared 3 to 1, they look the exact same. In other words, they look congruent. So, therefore, 3 is likely an obtuse angle as well. What about 4? Well, like 1 and 3, 2 and 4 also look congruent. So I would add angle 4 to our list of answers. So therefore, for this question, you should get 2 and 4 as your acute angles. Let's move on to the next question. It's asking us, what type of angle is A? So a lot of these questions are based off assumption. You may not know the direct angle measure, so you need to look at the diagram and trust your best bet. So in this case, angle A to me looks like an obtuse angle. And once again, the reason why I believe so is because a 90-degree angle looks something like this, an acute angle looks something like that, and an obtuse angle looks something like that. And to me, A most closely resembles that angle. For our final practice problem, we're asked to construct and label the vertex and rays of an acute angle. And this may look like a simple problem because it really is. All we're doing is constructing an acute angle and labeling its parts. So let's see. There are a variety of answers that would be acceptable, so I'm going to construct one of them. And remember, an acute angle is less than 90, so there are many that work. And in this case, let's say that this is point A, this is point B, and this is point C. Remember, the vertex is the intersection of two rays, so B would be my vertex, and the two rays would be AB and CB. So this is my final construction of this angle. And if I were to name it, remember, we name it from the order by which it's written. So it would be A, B, C. Because B corresponds to the center, or in other words, the vertex.